You're listening to an episode of the Abigail Peugh Podcast with, you guessed it, Abigail Peugh. I'm an introverted mama who took my online business from 0 to 7 figures in 15 months selling my own digital products on social media. And guess what? I did it all with my 3-year-old daughter no less than 3 feet away from me at all times. Now I'm bringing you everything I've learned about building a wildly profitable online business that supports your life while allowing you to truly live it. Get ready for raw, honest conversations with entrepreneurs making thousands per month selling their own digital products and people just like you who ditch self-doubt to create the life they've always wanted. If you're ready to make more money, have more impact, and still have time for the things that matter most, you're in the right place. Grab your sneakers, head out on your hot girl walk, and let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of my podcast. I am so excited you're here. I'm also very nervous. I'm not going to lie. I've tried to record this episode probably 10 times now, and I just keep psyching myself out, but this is the one. I can feel it. Although I said that in the last one too, so we'll see. So I thought it would be fun to kind of walk you through my journey to making $1 million, but I'm going to take you back a little farther because I'm a details girly myself. And I think context is important, right? I wasn't an overnight success by any means. And it took me 32 long years to make $1 million. Well, I mean, technically, I did it in 15 months, but I feel like there's just so much more to my story and how I got here than just those 15 months. I actually pulled this timeline from one of my reel captions over on Instagram. So let's dive right in. At 10 years old, my dad died suddenly of a heart attack. At 13, I went to private school starting in 7th grade. And after being homeschooled up until then, and yes, I was the weird homeschool girl that first year. At 15, I blew out my ACL and meniscus in a soccer tournament, and my dreams of playing soccer in college were shattered. At 16, I got my first job as a babysitter to pay for the gas for my first car, which was a very old stick-shift Toyota Tercel. At 17, I got dumped by my first high school sweetheart and had a pretty dark year after that. At 18, I became the senior yearbook editor at my high school and finally felt like I had some direction for my life. It really opened my eyes to how much I loved being creative, and it was the first time I considered that I could do something creative for my job someday. At 19, I got my first serious nannying job that I would have for the next several years that helped me pay my way through college. At 21, I transferred to Cal State Fullerton after spending 3 years at community college. I worked while going to school and ended up paying off my student loans the week after I graduated, which felt so good. At 22, I started my own floral design business after interning with a floral design company during college. At 23, I graduated from college with a degree in sociology and married my second high school sweetheart, Trevor, who I'm still married to today and have an almost 4-year-old daughter with. At 24, I started working as a nanny for a celebrity family in Hollywood, and I got to meet Jennifer Garner, which if you guys grew up watching Alias, you know how cool that would have been, right? Like she was the nicest and sweetest lady ever, and I just grew up like watching her on Alias and loving everything about her. So meeting her in real life was the highlight of that year. At 25, I became the household manager for the family I used to nanny for. This was also the time that I started taking stock photography more seriously, using all the florals I would have during weddings, and I started selling my stock photos on marketplaces like Etsy and Creative Market. Fun fact, my Etsy shop is actually still open. I just have not touched it in years. And basically, I make like one sale, like $10 sale a month, and it covers my Etsy fees. But yeah, I should probably take that Etsy shop down. At 26, my husband and I moved to Portland and completely started our life and my floral design business over. It was the first time I'd ever lived away from home and my family, and I spent the first 6 months super depressed and not really sure what I was going to do with my life. This was also the year I got my first UGC client, and this was also the year I started doing customer support and social media for a digital product-based business. Now, I'm going to mention UGC a few more times, so for anyone who doesn't know what that stands for, UGC stands for user-generated content, and it's basically where I was creating content for brands to use on their social media, but I never posted it to my own, right? So essentially, I was like a silent or hidden content creator for them. I took pictures for them, I took videos for their reels, And then they just like purchased that from me. I never posted it to my own social media. Sidebar. I don't remember what year it was, but it was definitely when we were in Portland. But the woman who I was doing customer support and helping with her Instagram, who is actually still one of my best friends to this day, did a collaboration with me. So she had built an amazing personal brand selling stock photos. And we did a collab where I took all these dreamy and moody stock photos using all the flowers that I always had access to from weddings. And she launched it to her audience, and it was way more successful than I thought it would be. She did all the back end work. She did the website, the emails, everything really. So all I did was take these gorgeous pictures for her and the collaboration. But this was the first time I saw the potential with digital products, right? But I still wasn't quite ready to do it on my own. I mean, at this time, I was still in the headspace that I was only ever going to be someone's right-hand gal, right? I was really good at that. And now looking back, I realized that it was really just my brain trying to convince me that I wasn't good enough to ever build a business on my own. My floral business that I had mentioned earlier wasn't successful financially. I mean, the weddings were beautiful, but I always spent all the money on the flowers. And I feel like because that business wasn't financially successful, I had convinced myself that I could never be successful at business on my own and that I was only ever going to be someone's right-hand gal. But I digress. Moving on. At 27, I got my dream job as a floral studio manager for one of the best wedding designers in Seattle. And I was commuting from Portland to Seattle on the weekends that I was working weddings. We also realized around this time that we were around $70,000 in debt. Don't quote me on that. It was between $70,000 and $80,000 in debt. I know, insane, from our cars, credit cards, and my husband and I started budgeting very strictly. I cannot even tell you how many pounds of beans and rice that we ate to dig ourselves out of that debt hole. At 28, the commute from Portland to Seattle became way too much. So we ended up moving to Seattle for my studio manager job. And that's when I stopped doing wedding florals on my own. At 29, I got pregnant with my daughter, and we realized that I wouldn't be able to continue doing weddings when she was born. So we moved to Colorado, and both myself and my husband got remote jobs. This was when I got my dream job as a creative director. At 30, I was very unexpectedly fired from that job the day after we had moved into a new apartment that we could no longer afford. I started doing freelance work just to kind of make ends meet, and my husband was working overtime pretty much every weekend as well. That all happened in May of 2021, and I pretty much spent the rest of 2021 trying to get more freelance jobs, doing social media stuff for other brands, and continuing to work with my ongoing UGC clients. So now that you have some context, we're going to skip ahead to when my journey with this business and my personal brand kind of all began. In April of 2022, everything kind of imploded when my 30-something-year-old husband unexpectedly had 2 strokes. It was a nightmare. He spent a few days in the ICU. We had family fly out to help me with our daughter, and ultimately decided that we needed to move to be near my family. We didn't know what his recovery was going to look like, and we didn't have any family or friends to help in Colorado. So we broke our lease in Colorado and put all our stuff in storage, then moved to Idaho just a few weeks after his strokes. Little did we know, of course, another bump in the road. Our temporary rental in Boise that we stayed in for 3 months was basically a mold pit, but we'll come back to that later. So we were in Boise, and my husband was still healing from his strokes and basically couldn't help with our daughter for a few months. And that's when I decided it was time for me to do something, right? We had medical bills to pay, our temporary rental was almost up, and we needed more income. And truthfully, I needed to pour my heart into something, right? I felt so much stress and overwhelm, and I needed to do something where I felt like I was making an impact for our family and for others. I don't know how to explain it, right? I just needed to feel like I was making a difference. So in June of 2022, I decided to start a TikTok / my personal brand, whatever you want to call it, in secret though, because I was so afraid to fail publicly. I mean, I didn't even tell my husband I started the account until I hit, I think like 10K followers. But I remember I fired most of my freelance social media clients, and I just kept the one UGC client, the one I'd had for like 5 years at that point. And I started teaching people about UGC on TikTok, right? I had been doing UGC for almost 5 years at that point, and it felt like I had a lot to share with others about it. And all of a sudden, I had this incredible community on TikTok, right? By August of 2022, so about a month and a half after I started my TikTok, I had almost 12,000 followers on TikTok, and August 2nd, I launched my UGC starter kit. And in my first month, I ended up making $10,607, and I couldn't believe it. I still have the screenshot from that month because I just couldn't believe it. I think my original goal was to make $1,000 for my UGC starter kit that first month, and I absolutely blew that out of the water. It was insane. I was also getting more UGC clients from my TikTok, right? And in those first 90 days of selling my UGC starter kit, I hit 40K in revenue, and I felt like I was on top of the world. And in early November of 2022, I launched my digital product starter kit based on everything I had learned from launching my own digital product those past few months. And I immediately felt imposter syndrome. It was a small launch, and I don't even remember like how much I made during the launch. And then I just stopped talking about it, right? And I was getting asked about digital products literally all day on TikTok, right? People wanted to know about them from me. And I had so much that I could share with others about it, but my self-sabotage kicked in so hard. And I really just stopped talking about that new product. Then towards the end of November of 2022, everything fell apart yet again. And it felt like this was it for me and my personal brand, right? To this day, I have no idea who did this, but there was a troll who reported almost every single one of my TikTok videos without a valid reason. And my TikTok was taken down overnight. I'm talking 90,000 followers just gone. And I was heartbroken. I think I spent a week just feeling miserable, and I just kept thinking, okay, this is it. I felt so defeated. And I felt like I had just wasted 5 months of my life building something that disappeared overnight. Right. And then after about a week of just feeling sick to my stomach over this drama, I started over yet again. I created a new TikTok and grew my second TikTok account to over 90,000 followers again in just a few short months, right? Like this time I knew what I was doing. There was no like trial and error at the beginning. I knew exactly how to grow a TikTok. I will say I also had an email list that I was able to email everyone and say, hey, this TikTok got taken down. Here's my new one. So thank goodness for my email list. Then in January of 2023, I felt like I had been burned by TikTok, and I was definitely ready for a more stable platform. So I decided to bring my personal brand over to Instagram, and I went all in, right? I decided 2023 was going to be my year to figure out Instagram for myself. And holy crap, was it the best decision I ever made. At the time, I had around 3,600 followers on Instagram, but they were pretty much all from an Instagram I had created called In the Real World. Clever, I know, that I had started in 2022, and I never really did much with it. And it didn't really have a strategy for it either, right? So I had around 3,600 people following me in January of 2023. And by March, I had grown to 16,000 followers on Instagram. Like I still have the screenshots right here. I couldn't believe it. And in March, I had my highest month ever from digital products. And those sales were mainly from Instagram since I had taken a huge step back from TikTok, right? That month, I made over $90,000 in revenue from my digital products, and I was in shock, right? This was also the time when I realized that I was so much more passionate about digital products and teaching others how to market their digital products than I was about UGC, right? So I ultimately decided to fully pivot my entire personal brand to just digital products and Instagram growth and marketing, right? And I'm not gonna lie, it felt so risky, but I knew that I needed to be teaching what I was passionate about, right? When you are doing something every single day, you have to feel passionate about it if you want to keep doing it for years to come. Oh, I almost forgot. March was also the month we found out that I had pretty severe mold poisoning from our rental the summer before. And it kind of explained all the symptoms I had been experiencing during all this business growth that I had kind of just chalked up to stress, honestly. I was having several migraines every month, lots of nausea and brain fog, and the worst fatigue I had ever experienced in my life, right? So focusing on digital products just made more sense too, right? They really allowed me to build a business around our life and my mold detoxing that allowed for more passive sales, whereas UGC required so much more from me that I didn't have the capacity for anymore. And I've always been someone who practices what they preach. And because I currently still sell digital products, I feel like I'm so much more equipped to teach people about them and how to sell them and what's working right now. So the pivot made sense all around. To this day, I still have one ongoing UGC client that I will probably keep forever because I love the company and I actually really enjoy working with them. So ultimately, 2023 became my year of yes, right? I got paid to speak at conferences. I got paid to speak at a conference at Disney World, and my family got to come with, and we got to spend the week there after the conference. I was a guest on podcasts. We bought our first home. I retired my husband from his 9 to 5. I hosted my own masterminds. I had my first 200K month from digital products, and it was amazing. And all of that happened while detoxing from toxic mold, right? That year really taught me that I can handle anything, but also that I didn't have the capacity for all of that. Then in October of 2023, 15 months after launching my UGC starter kit, I hit 1 million in revenue from my digital products. And at the time of recording this, April 2024. Yeah. Just 6 months later, I have already hit 1.5 million in revenue from my digital products, which feels insane to even say. Like when I was a kid, I used to think about how much money $1 million was and never imagined I would even make that in my lifetime, right? And all of a sudden, I made that in 15 months. Like I literally have goosebumps finishing this story. I don't think I've ever sat down and told my story like this. And I'm sure I missed some things, but honestly, if you take anything from this episode, I want you to know that it's never too late to start something new, right? I seriously let self-sabotage and self-doubt talk me out of going all in on myself for years. And we are done with that, okay? Let's just all agree that we are done with that. And I know it's going to feel really hard some days when you are starting something new and you're going to want to give up. But like I always say, it's not hard. It's just new. And if I can do this, so can you. Now, I know that was kind of a whirlwind. Believe me, it was for me too. But I want to kind of briefly share a few things that I learned during this journey. So first and foremost, number one, you don't have to do things how everyone else does them in order to succeed. For example, I had a business coach that told me I needed to have a $10,000 offer in my product suite to hit 1 million in revenue. Now, if you know anything about me, you know that my goal has always been to impact as many lives as possible without it taking over my life, right? I mean, yes, I want to make a ton of money, but not at the expense of actually getting to enjoy life with my family, right? The level of support that is required, at least in my opinion, for a $10,000 offer, it's not for me, right? So naturally, I had to prove that coach wrong and find a way to make 1 million a year without a $10,000 offer. And spoiler alert, I did that in 2023. Number two, you have to put blinders on. One of my biggest struggles during this journey was comparing myself to others. And ultimately, I ended up muting so many of my, now friends who are in a similar niche as me because I always found myself comparing my success to theirs and picking myself apart if they were doing better than me or if they're doing something better than me. And that's just not it, right? Comparison truly is the thief of joy. And we don't have time for that around here, okay? So yes, make sure you do your market research, make friends in your industry, absolutely. But don't get sucked into this comparison game, right? It is just not worth your time. You are the only you in the world, right? You are the only one that teaches what you have to offer people. Your experiences, your journey, like you are the only you. Don't forget that. Okay, last but not least was I tried everything in that first year, right? So in the beginning, so all of 2023, I should say, I tried everything. I did one-on-ones because I really wanted to learn what my ideal customer was struggling with. I hosted group programs, I hosted masterminds, and ultimately trying all of those things really helped me to see that low-ticket digital products were the best for me and my capacity. So now that's all I offer as of now in 2024. And I feel like I would have always wondered if those other things were something I needed to do if I hadn't tried them, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I will never do any of those things again. I'm just saying that they don't work for me in the season I'm currently in, and that is okay. Okay, y'all, I need to go drink some water and get my hot mom walk in for the day. Thank you so much for coming along this journey with me. I'm so excited for this podcast, and I cannot wait to keep chatting with you, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you learned anything from this episode, I would love it if you could share it over on your Instagram stories and tag me at Abigail Peugh. Until next time, love you, mean it.